It all happened in the blink of an eye, just 9 games before the regular season ended. The Memphis Grizzlies, sitting comfortably in the 3rd seed of a fiercely competitive Western Conference, fired head coach Taylor Jenkins. Fans and analysts alike were stunned. How could a team with a winning record so close to the playoffs suddenly ditch the coach who guided them for years? The moment the news broke, it set off a storm of speculation about fractures in the locker room, secret front office agendas, and tensions that might have been bubbling under the surface. In this script, we'll take a closer look at why the organization made such a risky decision, the players' raw reactions, and what it all means for the future of the Grizzlies. It's the talk of the league, and no one can believe how swiftly it all unraveled. Even in a league notorious for shaking things up, firing a coach with a proven track record this late in the season is almost unheard of. Memphis had a solid 44-29 record, showing that on paper the team was far from struggling. Jenkins' departure defied conventional logic, sparking a flurry of questions. The front office's official statement thanked Jenkins for his years of service, but it offered no real clarity on the decision. Memphians woke up to social media feeds ablaze with disbelief, while commentators across the NBA scrambled to make sense of it. Many pointed to a possible internal clash that had reached a breaking point. Despite the respectable standings, the Grizzlies had shown signs of vulnerability. Over the previous few weeks, their once elite defense slipped, and they suffered several blowout losses that raised eyebrows. Though they were still in contention, the team's form was inconsistent. Some insiders claimed the slide revealed deeper issues, perhaps disagreements about rotations or dissatisfaction with certain coaching strategies. Jenkins had introduced a more motion-heavy offense, which seemed effective at first, but for a star. Like Morant, it meant fewer pick-and-roll sets. Ja's visible frustration during certain games fueled whispers that Memphis might be heading toward a bigger shakeup. When reporters asked Morant about the news, he admitted he found out while lying in bed, worried that the internet had said something about me again. His relief about his own reputation turned into shock upon learning that the news was, in fact, about Jenkins' firing. Even though Morant had voiced concerns about the team's style of play, he expressed sadness, emphasizing the bond he developed with Jenkins over the years. Morant credited him for fostering an environment where he could blossom into a star, so his reaction was a mix of confusion and regret. He also called teammate Jaren Jackson Jr. just to confirm they were both seeing the same jaw-dropping headlines. Jaren Jackson Jr. echoed Morant's feelings, describing the firing as a shock that left him struggling to process the drastic shift. Having played his entire young career under Jenkins, Jackson felt blindsided. Desmond Bane and other Grizzlies regulars also weighed in, saying that although they knew the NBA was a business, they never expected this move when they were still well within the playoff picture. Some took it personally, wishing they'd executed better on the floor so their coach wouldn't shoulder the blame. Others admitted they feared for the team's chemistry heading into the most important stretch of the season. Behind the closed doors of the FedEx Forum, rumors spread that friction had been building for months between Jenkins and certain players. Some pointed to the new offense, which changed the dynamics by reducing Morant's ball-dominant role. Others hinted at broader cultural disagreements. Memphis had been riding a wave of youthful swagger, at times criticized around the league for too much bravado. Perhaps Jenkins wanted to dial back the trash talk, while some players thrived on that identity. Add the pressure of recent controversies swirling around Morant's off-court issues, and it felt like the entire roster was walking on eggshells. If even a few players started tuning out Jenkins' message, that erosion of trust could have forced management's hand. According to insiders, tensions weren't limited to players and coach. There might have been a divide between Jenkins and the front office. Last offseason, Memphis quietly replaced key members of Jenkins' coaching staff, introducing new assistants with fresh philosophies. Some believe this move was a sign the front office wanted changes that Jenkins might not have fully supported. If disagreements over roster usage, offensive systems, or leadership style persisted, it wouldn't take much for them to escalate behind the scenes. When a team with serious playoff aspirations hits a rough patch and the coach doesn't seem to align perfectly with management's vision, drastic decisions can follow. General Manager Zach Kleiman insisted the firing was his alone, but he stopped short of explaining the exact reasons, leaving fans to connect the dots themselves. While most public comments from the players were respectful and subdued, a few off-the-record whispers indicated that Jenkins' philosophical shift rubbed certain veterans the wrong way. One rumor suggested that Morant had grown weary of emotion-heavy system, preferring to rely on the pick-and-roll sets that had once made him a breakout sensation. Another rumor claimed that Jenkins struggled to manage the locker room's contrasting personalities, from the outspoken to the reserved. It was also rumored that some role players felt uncertain about their minutes, with rotations changing unpredictably in the final stretch. Those small rifts can snowball, especially if players feel the coach doesn't trust them. Cutting ties with a coach who is still racking up wins might signal an ultra-high standard from the front office or reveal a frantic last-ditch effort to salvage team morale. Historically, teams that fire coaches late in the season rarely see immediate benefits. Some manage to rally around an interim coach and advance deep into the playoffs, but such Cinderella stories are uncommon. More often, a move like this can destabilize a locker room already dealing with internal issues. The Grizzlies now have the unenviable task of carrying on without their one figure who'd been leading them since their rebuild. Even if an interim coach sparks a temporary boost, the playoffs demand continuity, trust, and a shared identity, hard to preserve when an emotional bombshell has just rocked the team. In the short term, newly elevated interim coach Tuomas Isalo is in an unenviable position. He'll be expected to pick up the pieces, unify the locker room, and refine an offensive scheme that was partly of his own design. The management could be treating this as a trial period. If the Grizzlies perform well in the playoffs, Isalo might secure the permanent job. If not, names like Mike Budenholzer or other established veterans could surface as potential replacements. Some have even speculated about college coaches or European standouts who might fit Memphis's emerging style. One thing is certain, the Grizzlies need a coach who can mesh with Morant's skill set and also command respect in a locker room full of young talents with big personalities. Despite the drama, the Grizzlies remain a formidable team on the court, with the size, athleticism, and upside to compete against any opponent. Yet morale is critical, especially in high-pressure playoff series. If star players feel uncertain about leadership, that can manifest in mental lapses during crunch time. Some teams rally around the shock of a mid-season firing, others unravel. While it's too early to predict how Memphis will fare, the atmosphere in the locker room will heavily influence their playoff run. The Grizzlies might embrace a defiant, us against the world mentality, trying to prove that they're bigger than one man's departure. Or they could fold under the weight of fractured trust and lingering questions about why Jenkins was let go so hastily. This move could become a turning point in franchise history. If Memphis remains a contender and the new coach elevates their game, the front office will look like visionaries willing to make tough calls. But if the team slides backward and struggles to recapture the unity that made them so thrilling, the Jenkins firing will be remembered as a rash decision that disrupted something special. Key players such as Morant and Jackson are still in the early stages of their careers. If they end up feeling unsupported or uncertain about the franchise's direction, that disillusionment can fester, no matter how much they love the city. The bond between a star and a franchise is fragile if trust erodes at the organizational level. While official statements remain vague, the most plausible explanation is that an accumulation of performance inconsistencies, off-court distractions, and philosophical clashes eroded faith in Jenkins. Management likely saw evidence that the team's potential was slipping away rather than building toward a championship breakthrough. Perhaps they suspected the current approach wouldn't survive the intensity of playoff basketball. With star players quietly frustrated and a front office demanding results, Jenkins may have been viewed as a stumbling block. Even though he was a key architect of the modern Grizzlies, the franchise decided it was time for a new voice. The shocking aspect lies in how quickly everything unfolded. Coaches around the NBA publicly sympathized with Jenkins. Many had faced or witnessed similar cutthroat decisions. Analysts weighed in on whether Memphis was overreacting to a rough patch. Some pointed out the Cavaliers' firing of David Blatt. In 2016, when the team was first in the East, an eerily similar move that still provokes debate. Others invoke the Toronto Raptors, who let go of Dwayne Casey after a 59-win season, eventually winning a championship under Nick Nurse. So maybe Memphis is following a blueprint: replace a good coach with someone who can push them over the top. Or maybe it's a miscalculation that could backfire spectacularly. Regardless, people around the league are watching, ready to see if this sets a new precedent for contenders under pressure. In the end, we're left with a swirling sense of mystery. How did a season that seemed so bright lead to such a dramatic change, one that even players didn't see coming? The Memphis Grizzlies had made strides under Jenkins, transforming into a legitimate Western Conference force. Yet beneath the success, tension had apparently been brewing all along. Philosophical disagreements, a new offense that clashed with Ja Morant's instincts, and potential frustration about slipping standards. When things reached a tipping point, management chose to rip off the bandage rather than wait until the offseason. The repercussions will echo through the final games and into the postseason, shaping the team's chemistry and ultimately influencing its long-term identity. As you watch Memphis navigate the aftermath, consider the stakes. A young team filled with rising stars, a suddenly vacant head coaching position, and a front office that has shown it isn't afraid of bold moves. This is a recipe for either a triumphant turnaround or a disheartening collapse. The Grizzlies' fate now rests on whether this mid-season gamble unifies the squad and unlocks their latent potential or fractures their spirit when they need solidarity the most. It's a high-stakes drama that will continue to unfold under the bright lights of the playoffs. However this chapter ends, one thing is certain: Memphis fans will be talking about Taylor Jenkins firing long after the final buzzer sounds, forever pondering what truly happened behind the scenes in a season that had all the makings of a Cinderella story, until it didn't.